basically that's the thing. And like, I mean, he didn't talk to me because he was focused on the game, but
Mhm.
you know, during the game you can actually just say like, oh my god, it's so fast, oh, or like, oh, I died and stuff.
Mm.
And it's fun, but to be honest, it depends on like how much you want to like engage with the game. For example, like I had periods where I played VR, like especially Beat Saber, every day for a week, because I really
Mhm.
needed to escape the like physical confines of my place. And then there were other
Okay.
days where I was like, I didn't really want to engage into like this kind of like hyper excitement, because I was just feeling like, you know, lazy and stuff. So there were weeks where I just
Mm.
kind of left my VR headset on the shelf for a long period of time. But that's me.
Mm.
But I wanted to tell you this so you don't go like, oh my god, it's like, you know, a gateway, because it's actually a bit tiring to use VR, because you have to like
Mm.
sort of engage your attention all the time. So if you're like kind of, you know, you have some seasonal depression and you're like, I don't want to do anything, you won't actually feel like, or at least I don't feel like that. So it's not like the answer, but it can be an answer.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I was well, the thing was, what I texted, well, the idea didn't really write it down yet, but you've seen The Cell, the movie, back in the days? Haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Uh, Basically, it's a sci-fi movie with gothic horror aspects to it. It's kind of like The Silence of the Lambs meets sci-fi.
Okay.
But the idea was that the the main character, no, it's not the main character, is a social worker therapist, played by Jennifer Lopez, I think, and she enters the dream of the locked in, shut in, like psychologically lock-in syndrome serial killer to figure out what where his last victim is or anything. That's a good tension arc, but the role of Jennifer Lopez was in fact to use it as a therapeutic means to engage a small way into a new world, into a realm where he feels safe, where he can connect, where she could construct a narrative in which she uses the narrative as a means of a therapeutic process. So that idea came quite interesting and viable when we talked the last time, because you mentioned the space and the realm where you had like a profoundly social, almost spiritual experience where you could get in touch with emotions that weren't uh, per se activated in normal surroundings. And that gave me that idea that's actually quite interesting to delve into, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before I go into a new topic, because VR is used in psychology a lot in treatment, but before I dive into that, I just wanted to introduce you to, so Tatiana, meet Jonathan,
Oh,
Jonathan meets Tatiana. Jonathan is a reporter, if I'm correct me
yeah,
again if I'm wrong, and Tatiana works in communication, but related to tech, right?
okay.
Okay. And Tatiana, since it's your first time, just wanted to let you know, like, join in any time in the conversation if you have something interesting to say, or you can just like cruise and listen to our discussion. It's totally fine. Also, just so you know, I'm recording this. Just have to let you know. But if there's anything that you know are uncomfortable with, please let me know. Cool. Yeah, so VR is used in psychology. For example, if you are like agoraphobic, which is like you
Mhm.
have this fear of crowds, we can sort of put you in a VR setting and then slowly add in people so that you slowly get used to people. But since
Mhm.
it's a controlled environment, you know, it's like exposure therapy, but with a control element. since it's digital. Or for veterans who have PTSD, you know, of war. There's also a lot of work done in California, if I'm not wrong. This guy is very famous for it. His name is Albert Skippertso, and he works at the USC, which is the University of Southern California Institute of Creative Technology. I'll send a link if you want to look into it more. And he's pretty cool, and he does a lot of like VR with PTSD. And I talked to him once at a conference, and he was like, it's great to have a VR experience that can bring healing, but also for the patients, they need something to like teach them the neurologic pathway of achieving that catharsis. So you do need like an offline thing. Like, for example, it could just be a card, a printed card of like a scene in the experience that was very key to them, so that when they look at that picture, they're sort of like, I guess, triggered into remembering that whole experience. Like, I felt this feeling, then I felt this feeling, then I felt this feeling, and that was the thing that helped me get over my PTSD. So I feel like this is very important, because it's not just like, oh, this new technology is the answer to everything. It's like it enables a certain type of results, but we still cannot forget the physical world, and we have to still make them work together, because we are part of the physical world, even though our minds can be part of like in somewhere between the physical world and the imaginary world, but we are still physical. And then that raises a bunch of other questions, like, you know, if you live in VR, you still have to eat, kind of like in the movie Avatar, you know, like where the guy gets into this casket and then he gets so immersed into his new life, but he still has to wake up and like detach from that life to like eat and to exercise, otherwise his like body will die and his muscles atrophy, etc. So like, I mean, that's like a very cyberpunk extreme version of things, but at least for me, that's like, you know, when people are like, oh, but we'll just spend all our days in VR, and I'm like, no, we can't, because we're still biological beings. So there's like a hard barrier there. We'll never just like only live online.
But we have imagination, and we can tap into feelings through imagination and some symbols and experiences experienced in VR. So in that sense, it's a interesting aspect. Like I told you, I didn't really see it other than games so interesting, but now it's actually, well, in that context, you can, for instance, you can play with time. You can replay your own timeline in some way.
Yeah, in spirituality, there's this notion of we are beings that live within time, but also out of time. So like, for example, when you're like, you know, in your commute and you're like chopping things and you're eating and you're talking to people, you're like in the present, so you're living within time. But when you're thinking, or when you have like, when you're meditating, or when you have like these sort of realizations, you're also living outside of time, because you might be like connecting to something with the past or something in the future. And VR, I don't know if AR does that so well, but at least VR, because it's so immersive, does create the space for you to live outside of time for a while, and to just have like a cathartic thing, or just have like, it provides this ground for you to have this emotionally impactful experience that just, you know, reprograms, well, not really reprogram, that sounds a bit scary, but like really just brings some kind of really strong insight to you. There's this experience called, I'm gonna look for a video, called Notes on Blindness. I don't know if I already mentioned it before. No? So it's the story, it was originally a book that was made into a VR experience. It's the experience of a person who could see and that gradually lost his sight. So he writes notes, or he records audio notes about what it's like to go blind. and he actually does it with a sense of curiosity. So it's incredible. And so they make the insights that he have into like a VR experience. For example, for a blind person, sound is very important because it lets you know of a presence of something. Like if another person were in a room with you and you were blind and they didn't make a single sound, you would know that they were there, you know, or like an object. If you didn't hear something fall on like your table, like 2 feet away, you might not know that there's a table there. Or like when people walk around you in the park, you only notice, like perceive their existence through the thing that makes the sound, so often their feet. So for example, in VR, the experience would be that you would see these like fluorescent feet walk around, but you wouldn't see the person. So it's like how a blind person perceives the environment, which is very interesting. Let me see. I think I'm gonna use this one. Let me just quickly check if, just a sec, sorry, my internet is a bit slow for some reason. Okay, I have it. I shall share my screen. This is the thing with digital conferencing. Oops. Okay, so this is a person here, and this is like, you know, the field of perception of a blind person. It's all black because you don't know, except when there is sound.
Rustling of the newspaper, murmur of conversation. The myriad voices and sounds create a panorama of music and information. Where there is no activity, there's no sound, and then that part of the world dies. The earliest experience of panic took place in the middle of December. I left the house, but had only gone about 100 yards when I was aware of a growing feeling of doubt and uncertainty, as if I was banging my head, my whole body against the wall of blindness.
Anyways, that's like a small taste of the experience. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I can really understand what it's like to be blind. He also mentioned this experience where rain fell on his house, and suddenly he could like have a perception of his space, because of course every part of the roof that hit water made a sound. So he could like have a map of his space, which is incredible, you know. It's a different way of perceiving space and perceiving your reality. But if you go out and like you don't know your way around, then you can get lost because you can't look around and like recognize the scenery. It's pretty cool. Or like if you focus on a sound, like in the video that I showed you, there was a moment, a child that was yelling daddy, that was like yellow, and like if you focus on that, then you can just, if you focus on that sound, then you can sort of perceive that thing. I think for me, I don't know, it's pretty cool. What do you guys think?
It's amazing.
Sorry, yeah. What this experience made me think of is that actually it can help develop and work on empathy, because actually VR, you are, yeah, they put you in this experience. And this is where empathy is born, because you can live the experience of other people and you can live them in your body, almost, not only in your brain, but this is what it is made for. So maybe one of the applications would be like ethical application of VR to, for example, to sensitize people to handicaps, or even it makes me think about a lot of handicaps actually they are not seen and you don't have to you don't have to have a broken leg or something like this. So I mean, actually most of the handicaps there, you cannot see them. It makes me think of people sometimes, that sometimes they park on the handicap slots, and then somebody will give them the remark that you're not handicapped, because they expect people to have some particular appearance, but actually they are, and they do not know. Maybe they cannot stay in a car a long time, they cannot walk for a long time when you have a multiple sclerosis, for example. You cannot hold a long time before you go to the toilet, you see. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we live all in our bodies, we have all our experience, we perceive the world differently. So this VR experience really could be something very interesting to put yourself in the shoes of other people, and this way develop empathy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think so too. That could open up, maybe even from ethical, and also ethical, practical standpoint. What I think about empathy is interesting to me. It's some things are really left. If you experience something, or for example, blindness, that's something really hard to imagine. Mm-hmm. And I can try and keep my eyes closed for a while, but I would never even be in the realm of being totally in understanding of what that actually means. And in the case of, if I would be in a place where I would make decisions or contributions in terms of a design of something or policy, I don't know, that would limit me. The fact that I don't have the empathic ability to understand what it would be like for mm-hmm. Another person or a client or consumer or whatever. So in that sense, yes, it can augment the skin in the game factor. My decisions will be, or my thoughts will be influenced by the mere fact that I have skin in the game, or that I have empathy, or that I know about what's going on. And in that sense, an immersive VR experience of a disability or another specific thing, it could really be helpful in that sense, mm-hmm. to help empathy and even the practical aspect of it.
Yeah.
That was
and also for a more inclusive society. Mm. It can help if there were like projects like this. For example, in schools, that we teach children how it is to feel, or to live like of another person, because for them often these are categories, and the child first. When he passes through this individualization process in his early years, I mean, at some point it's him the center of the world, and it's normal. I mean, they need it for their development. But when we try to explain them things, it's not always easy, because most of things are abstract. So until a certain age, child cannot get these concepts. So, but the children, they can be very cruel, and unfortunately, a lot of children with differences, whether these differences are physical or mental, they suffer a lot at school, and it's something that. When you have children, it's something that you ask yourself, because if your child is different and you know that he will have difficulties in school, because maybe they do not do it on purpose, but the children, as most of the people, they don't want to accept difference. And so maybe if they could feel what it is to feel like, for example, what it is to feel like when your IQ is only 100, for example. If you have intellectual difficulties, or because you are slow, you cannot answer the questions from a teacher, or or just to have another disease, or even yeah, things like this. It would be nice to have them at school, so to for them
There is,
also.
sorry.
Yeah, no, this again. I finished.
I just wanted to say that there is a discussion about this, and there's like two sides to this argument in the VR industry. On one side, people are like, VR can help like induce empathy, like we've talked about before. On another side, there's like VR is the empathy machine, and when it's not done well, it can be very cheap. For example, if we kind of just put a lot of people do 360 VR recording, which is they just take a camera that records in 360, and then they go into some village in Africa, and then they record everything, and they bring it to people, and then they're like, I can immerse you in a village in Africa. While that has some value, it you know, without like proper art direction or intention or guiding, I feel like it can be a limited experience, and also it feels weird because you have like this sort of intruder perspective, you know, because you're like in the environment, but you're not like part of the environment. So I think that if you want to make an experience to induce empathy, you really need to be careful with your artistic direction. And I think that Notes on Blindness did it very well, because you are sort of exploring the point of view of the blind person with like the instructions of the original guy, the guy who did the audio tapes in your ears. So that kind of like solves a little bit the imposter syndrome, if you want, in this experience. And then there's also a thing about like putting it in schools. There are some schools that are experimenting with VR, but there's also an ethical question where like children below the age of 9, I think, are discouraged in doing VR because it could affect their perspective of reality. So like children below 8 or 9, they don't understand if something is real or not. I remember when I was small, I watched, this is embarrassing, but it's just an illustrative example. I watched The Little Mermaid, and I had a dream that night that I could breathe underwater. And the dream was so vivid that the next day when I went into a pool, I decided to try. So I put my head underwater and I breathed through my nostrils. And of course it was terrible. But like, it's kind of, you know, like for me, it was just, I believed wholly that I could breathe. I was like, what if I'm special and I can, you know? So if you kind of put a headset on a child and they believe that they can fly or stuff, it could be dangerous, because I don't know, they could jump out of a window and believe that they'll fly. So in terms of, you know, like responsibility, that's why on the boxes of VR headsets, they always say like, we don't recommend this on children. We don't have enough data. There's no scientific research yet on this to prove how much effect this has on children. And a lot of people who are in the VR industry, they sort of go like, I just put my VR headset on my children, but I'm careful about which games I expose them to, but I do want to like sort of impact their brain in terms of feelings and in terms of like this wonder, this amazement of space. So there's a lot of work to do in that aspect, you know, like I think we could create a lot of programs, educational programs around that. There's also, I know I'm speaking for a long time, but there's a lot to say about this topic. There's VR used in the education sector, or immersive tech used in the education sector, where a lot of people are coming to realize that education done thus far is in a very archaic mode, where it's like a human speaks and then like transmits information, and then the human, like the child, has to like listen and then remember it and then spit it out. So there's a lot of like different types of educational programs that are being developed for that. There's one in Brussels called, what's it called, Tatiana? The one in Digitizer, I forgot his name.
There was a program about you mean Alteria?
Yeah, Altura Solutions.
Did they do something in education? Because I think that they're in manufacturing.
Oh, they pivoted? Maybe they pivoted. I don't know.
But actually, what they said is that, well, they were targeting higher education. And what they said that is that that the universities that do not have enough enough money, enough budget, they would be interested in doing it, but still, like Belgian universities, yeah, so it doesn't work for now. So they really have to put some budget for it. But if you can imagine, if universities do not have money, then schools neither.
Yeah.
So yeah, but this is definitely something because they said that it would definitely help with abstract subjects like math, physics, or chemistry. And it actually, the idea came from one of the founders that had a lot of difficulties in physics and chemistry, and he thought that it would be really helpful. So probably one day it will be.
Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not like, I don't have any advantage in promoting them, but I thought that their idea was really cool. And the reason why we both know this is because we both worked at Digitizer, which is, well, was a tech hub in Brussels, but with COVID, I think that project sort of had to go to sleep. But basically, yeah, besides what Altheria does in, I think, like anatomical sciences, if you have like a 3D model of a skull or a heart in augmented reality, it doesn't have to be VR in this case, in augmented reality, like say through your phone. So like, say you're on your desk, you're studying, and then through your phone, you can sort of see like a human-sized heart, like sort of float on top of your desk. And then because it's in digital, you can also label things, or you can sort of like highlight a certain zone. And I think that that's very helpful because I actually did a year of vet science studies, and it was painful because in Belgian universities we still use like 2D drawings of like a muscle, like an arm of a dog, and you have to just like read the description and sort of with the explanation of the teacher in class, sort of like guess where like the ligaments attach and stuff. And then of course you have the dissection, but like it's so limited versus if you do this in digital, you can just see the whole thing, you can rotate it, you can play with it. So not only do you learn better, but you can also just have fun with the whole thing. So there's this really big concept of edutainment coming, which is like a mix of education and entertainment. And it's a spectrum. It can go from like, you know, more education, like that anatomical example that I talked about, or it can be more like a museum exhibit that's more entertainment, but that at the end is very educational. And I think that that has a lot of potential to be applied for right now, because there's like first AR, which can be done with a phone or a tablet, or you can do projection AR, which is basically you project something onto a wall or onto a 3D object. You know, like say you have a ball sphere, and then you project things with projection mapping that match the shape of the ball, and you can also interact with it. Say you want to like make a phone call on the wall, then you can just like press on the buttons and then make the phone call. Or there's also like VR, there's also the concept of VR but outside of a headset, where like you're immersed in a room, like in a cave they called it, where there's like just screens all over. But this is of course extremely expensive, so there are very few cases where you're just immersed in like a world, but like it's outside of the headset. It's like your whole body is immersed in it. And I think that there are a lot of things that can be done. In Hong Kong, there was this I don't know what's it called, like a theater hall, and it's existed since the early 2000s, where there's this screen that's at the top of the building on the ceiling, and it's like a full half globe dome. So they would project like scenes from the seabed of like sea life, of like sharks, and they would make like documentaries with that. And at the time that was already like super immersive. So imagine if you did that in like a cave, that would be even better. And people would just not only learn, they would see, and then they can get like emotional attachments. Like for things like biology, I think that if you sort of let children at an early age appreciate the beauty of nature, the beauty of animals, it would also greatly help them in their respect of nature. Because right now we live like in cities, we're removed from nature, but like, you know, indigenous cultures, they sort of grew up with animals, and so they're like, you know, they have this emotional link which makes them want to protect it. So yeah, all around it real good. I'm always like, there's just so much about this technology. But what do you guys think?
Well, I was thinking about what you said at the beginning of the talk, like the distinction between, okay, well, it's all good and fun and games, but we are still biological people. We have needs in our physical biological world, and that need to be met. And that's actually an interesting idea to keep in mind, because you do get carried away when thinking about the possibilities in VR and augmented reality. And I think it's a trap in a way to think like, oh, we can make it better in VR. And that's when I think that was cleverly portrayed in that movie, Ready Player One, where they're living in stacks and nobody's really doing anything to improve or and maintain their surroundings in the physical world. It's all in digital. So that's an interesting thing to, because when you say you, and I think that could be really interesting to have like an immersive nature surrounding, but in a pristine nature surrounding maybe, or something that could have been here, because you have to really look for a nice forest. Well, there are nice forests, of course, but still you can hear the noise of cars in the background, and even though it looks pretty, it's not really that secluded anymore. So that there's a detachment between what you would like to convey through means of virtual immersement, and when it's actually the reality. Sorry, I was babbling on in a philosophical way. I've lost my point.
Well, I think I understand what you mean, and there's a point on that where, you know, it's like, I think that the important thing to sort of keep in mind is like the red thread when you want to create an experience or just explore is like, what is the point of this experience? Because if your point is to amaze people, then you can make like a pristine forest, for example, you know, like a fairy forest, or like, for example, if your point is to sort of show a rare phenomenon, like, you know, the blue flowers of the forests of Allah that happen like once a year, and then like it's very difficult to catch, then you can do that in VR, and then you can even like add some music and sort of theatrize it a little bit and make it like a wow thing. But also if what you want to do is educate children, because, you know, it's hard to maybe transport a group of children to the ocean, and you might want to like cut back on the wow factor so much. I mean, nature is beautiful as it is, but also it's important to know what it really is like. I've been reading this book by this comedian called Whitney Cummings, and she said that she hadn't tasted real grapes before the age of 8 because her parents didn't really give her really good food. And she was very disappointed when she tasted her first grape in her life. She was like, oh, this is rancid. This does not taste at all like the grape flavor in Fruit Loops. And I think that this is very important for children to actually see nature as at its best. You know, like, oh, this is the ocean. This is so beautiful. This is like going through water. And also like the less pretty parts. for them to just not really have like a trust crisis with nature, which is like, it's pretty, but oh my god, it's ugly, and it's, you know, and like, oh, nature is disgusting. Actually, it's really important in every relationship to see the good and the bad and have a full picture. So again, it depends on your intention of your experience. Do you want to just educate? In that case, you have to make it like kind of real. In that case, maybe you want to adopt more a investigative, you know, like journalism approach. There's a lot of VR in journalism. Or if your objective is to like amaze, then maybe add more pretty things, or it can be both. Then you might want to like take like the real thing and then add some like re-enhancements on top, like some digital things like circling out something, or like, you know, adding some effects to draw attention or stuff like that. And I think that the technology is like a tool to help. For example, there are these sort of earphones that are sensitive to your head movement. So like if you do this, it actually like tracks the position of your head. And so, for example, if you are, I don't know, say if the immersion is that you are in, I don't know, a glass bubble, and when you move your head, you know, it would give you different sounds, then that is cool, you know? Like it's like you actually feel like you are in the different parts of the bubble because of the position of your head. And that's a tool in immersing you in something. Or yeah, like what's it like to be in the stomach of a catfish or something?
I mean, that sense, but the like the heart-shaped AR, that could be really clear how that could benefit, because it could be, if you like it, that's a flight simulator for a physician or a doctor or a veterinarian in that sense.
Yeah. There's actually with the HoloLens, so it's like a mixed reality headset that Microsoft created a couple years ago. It's still in demo phase, really. They do that. So there's like a human body with different layers, and you can shed away the layers, if I remember correctly. So, or you can add on. So you can just see the skeleton, and then you can see the skeleton with the muscles, and then you can see the muscles with the organs, and then you can see the skin. And you can sort of remove. And I think that's really cool. On another hand, I also saw.
Indeed,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. My analogy would be like the flight simulator, because like a pilot still he trains on a flight simulator to fly a big plane, because it's expensive to have his first clunk. Didn't know where that came from. We all crashed. But then the idea is still to put the pilot in the airplane. So the simulator is a tool to educate. In that sense,
they exist.
There's a clear link between like looking at a heart. Oh, that's where these valves look like. After that, you need to know how it looks in the real world. But the virtual version helped you get your bearings. And
and a lot of learning is like you have to experience it, like flight or fighting or surgery. It's like unless you've lived through the actual experience, you haven't really learned, because there's only so much you can learn. So there are some simulation things. There's also like firefighting, a lot of things, a lot of simulations. That's also use of VR. And in surgery, for example, I tried one that was really cool, that was paired together with a pen, a physical pen that I had to hold. That was a scalpel in VR, and it was a pen that was put on like a ball, so it could like rotate. And so I would like put on the headset and then hold the pen, so it looked like I would hold a scalpel, and then they would be like take the scalpel up to this height, and then they would like, sorry, I'm very bad at like explaining this, but basically you would have like a human who's, you know, put to sleep in front of you, and then they would tell you like, oh, the task is to insert some support thing between two vertebrae. So they would show you first, like in a video, like a 3D video, like this is how you do the operation. You take out the vertebrae, you take out one thing, you insert something, and then you like sew up the whole thing. And then you'd be like, okay, and then it'd be like, now you, and then you have to like cut open the skin, take out the thing. And then also it's not just that, because that's kind of gimmicky, right? They would tell you like, insert the scalpel at this degree laterally, push this much, and then at this point you have to rotate the scalpel how many degrees, like on the X or the Y axis, and things like that. So I thought that that was really cool. And that project was made jointly with a surgeon, like a Turkish surgeon. So there's a lot of projects that are being developed cross-disciplinarily. And I think that that's really cool. What do you think? Sorry, I've been speaking so much. I just like sort of you start me on a topic and I'll just, oh this. So yeah.
Yeah, do you have like in Belgium or in Europe, what are the for you the best VR projects? And what about well, we say that in artificial intelligence we are far behind, except for example the research, but the like the applications and stuff like this. But what in terms of VR and AR?
Well, there are a couple ones that are my favorite in VR, which I've mentioned last time. In terms of gaming, there's Beat Saber. In terms of like the emotional experiences, there's Notes on Blindness that I shared, and then there's another one that I shared last week that's called Where Thoughts Go. If you watch the recording of the previous one, you'll get what it is about. In terms of AR, there's this company called Impossible Things, and they do like AR in museums, and their experiences aren't like super long, but I find like they're very well thought out. And so it's not just like, oh, this thing is moving. It's also like it triggers some thought. For example, well, basically this experience is like when you use the app and you look at certain paintings that they've had to encode through the app comes, the painting comes to life. So for example, there's this painting of just this guy, like a romantic, like old painting of a guy with a hat. And then when you scan it with your phone, the painting comes to life, and the guy actually like brands a smartphone and then takes a picture of you. And then that piece is called The Painting's Revenge, because now when people go to museums, they just like look at the painting for 3 seconds and then take a picture of it without really like understanding what it is about. And so if you put yourself in the place of the painting, it's like you don't really take the time to understand its background. You just like took a picture and then left. And if I were the painting, I would feel a little bit used. And so in this case, they gave the painting an opportunity to like fight back and take a picture of you, like a snapshot. So you'd be like, oh no, like, but what about my image? You're not allowed to do that. And then they'll be like, aha, see, you did that to paintings as well. So I think that's super smart. It's like these small touches of genius. Or there are other ones where like when you scan a painting of like some winter scenario from, I don't know, the 1800s, like the layover, the AR layover is like a cyberpunky, like a futuristic view where like the river in the painting is like completely polluted, and then there's like a nuclear center in the back that's like spitting smoke, and it just kind of makes you go like leap through time and go, oh, this was like this painting was kind of boring, but it was pristine nature, and then this is what progress did. And then it just makes you reflect. And I think that in this case they did a good job. Even though it's like very small, very short experiences, it does sort of make you go, wait, oh, instead of just, oh, the painting moved, and in terms of like ongoing projects, I haven't really heard of anything lately that really blew my mind. But I think that something that's very interesting is like the concert space, because since with COVID we can't really go to concerts, there's a lot of companies that are trying to bring concerts into VR, and it can be good or it can be bad. I've tried some apps that were really, really shit, that were just like 360 filming in a concert, and the sound quality wasn't great and the image quality also wasn't great. It just felt like you were sort of astral projecting into a concert of the past, but you can't really feel, you know, the vibe of the concert. You can just see, like, if you're like in the fans area, you can just see like fans just like losing their shit and looking very inelegant, you know, like with their fat bellies coming out of their t-shirts and just like generally like screaming, and you're like, okay, like, but there's no real value, or there's like maybe like the options are just artists that you don't really like, you know, so there's a bit of a there's no real value. But I've been to an experience last week where it was kind of like they mixed the music of a group of artists with this like a sort of imaginary scenery of New York. I'm gonna just show you what that looks like. Sorry, hold on. Just gonna share screen for a sec. So this is the experience. I recorded this from within my headset, so sometimes it's not super clear because maybe internet wasn't great, and it's a platform where people could join in live. And this is traffic. It's like a so that was the thing. I mean, it's a short video, it's imperfect, but I had a moment where I was like, oh, this is actually cool. In this angle, this is cool. It wasn't perfect because, you know, to get into the room, it was a bit of a hustle because they built this whole thing by themselves, and sometimes you have some like bugs coming up. But I think that that kind of music experience is much better because it is social. But you can also have your own experience. You know, you can like be in the moment, be like listen to the music, have like a sort of artistic moment. Like, for example, for me, it was like when I was looking at the red traffic thing, at first I was like, okay, weird artsy modern art thing, and then later I was like, oh, it's the flow of people. And then with the vibe of the music, it just kind of, I don't know, it hit me. There was a nice moment to that. So I think that that's like a good step forward, even though it's definitely not replacing concerts. But I am pretty interested in like what people would develop in the next couple of years in terms of musical experiences.
I had an epiphany moment right now. Wildlife. Is there any work done in terms of VR and experiencing? Like preservation? Okay, I'll just... the problem, I think, with wildlife and well, zoos, of course, are awful. This year, right before COVID, we went to Rwanda, and we went to the mountains where the mountain gorillas are. We didn't do the gorilla meet and greet because that was really expensive, and at that point we did some other things too, and we chased chimpanzees, which was cool at the moment, until at the point that you realized we're chasing them and they're not. I don't think they are so happy that we're chasing them, because well, we see chimpanzees in the wild and we were tracking them, and So it kind of bugged me, the fact that at in one sense, I knew there was conservational ecotourism, in the sense that, well, the money we spend on these things helps preserve the habitats and the ecosystem, and they provide a place where these species could still flourish and thrive, or survive at least. But still, it was, yeah, I was kind of aware that, well, me being present here is kind of a disturbance. So I was at one point just now picturing like a situation where a group of mountain gorillas is being left alone, other than that there may be some poles with some 360 VR cameras where you can opt in as with your headset. So you can track too much, as opposed to how it was done now, and still have like I don't know, I think you can have a business model where you can still have the preservation revenue necessary to keep it going. Is that a novel idea or a stupid idea? Or...
There are no stupid ideas. I think that it's definitely cool. I'm very big. I really like any ecological, environmental preservation efforts. So I'm always really up to that. I haven't heard of so many that were very advanced. Most of the time, it's like a 360 video in some place, and then you would like maybe see a giraffe. But then it gets boring very quickly because there's like no bond between you and the content. It's really just like
yes,
yeah.
But you can aid that with like art direction, like you said, like with maybe a guided tour who was explaining, now we're going to see this, and for instance here, and just now we captured the moment where they were feeding or cuddling, I don't know, and that camera captured it, so you can relive that moment, and you can be there present, and you can see it, but you can get a context of what you're about to see, and it's, in that sense, it helps the fact that you're immersed in it, you're experiencing it, because it was really, well, it was, well, we went for a nature hike, sorry, and we started at the same point, and there were thousands of, no, not thousands, tens of, a couple of hundred people there, all dressed in pristine, expensive ranger outfits, and like they just hopped on off the plane from America or whatever, and they paid a shitload of money to have the gorilla experience, and they were present with gorillas, but I couldn't really see like, how is this helping the social integrity of gorillas as a group, as a troop, and every day they're being bombarded. Well, there are rules, of course, and it's still between limits, I think, not to disturb them too much, but still, it was intrusive.
I can understand that, because I also felt that feeling. I felt like I was this sort of dirty, obese, white tourist when I went to Tibet, and there's like this tour where you go up a mountain, and then it's like, oh, this is the sacred lake, this is the sacred thing, and then you would just have children that would come to you and like put their goats on you and ask for money to take pictures, and then you're like, I feel terrible, like because you just like come in your van and then you take pictures and then you leave, and like even if you have the best intentions to like help or sort of be nice to these people, you're like, I'm actually exploiting them, I'm using their views. And so I understand that feeling.
You're leaving revenue, well, you're buying
stuff, which is good, but also like it's really like
it's distorting.
Yeah, it is. I do feel like terrible, and I feel like there must be much better ways to help them than to sort of force my way into their countries and use their scenery and give them like a small sum every, and in that aspect, I guess, like a 360 video, at least in a, an animal preservation context, is much less intrusive, because you don't have to go there anymore. And if you've never seen like a video of a savannah or anything. It's like, oh, this is what a savannah is like, and this is how animals drink. They have to bend down and stuff. But I don't feel like there is so much more value than watching a documentary at this point. So I'm kind of like maybe there is a step that needs to be done here, where people have to explore and then find a tool or a way to make this better. Maybe like, for example, if you, well, I was gonna say maybe if you're like flying on top of like a big herd of like, you know, the animals, the buffaloes or whatever that live in huge packs, and that's like visually very impacting. But like flying in VR is very rarely a very good idea because you get seasick very easily. But yeah, I don't know. The only experience that I know of, the only people that I know that make this so far is a group called Habitat XR. I'll share the link here. And I was trying to get a catch up on their work because I haven't checked in with them in a while. But yeah, their website is not loading, so I can't really tell you so much, except that in the past I know that they do like 360 videos, but I don't know how good they are. They also sort of use spatial audio, so the sound at least is 3D, or they're at least, I know that they're trying to bring 3D sound into it, so you really feel like you're immersed in the environment and you're not just looking, you know, through a glass, and you feel less sort of like displaced from the environment. But I don't know so far how good it is, so I'll let you guys explore that. I wanted to share something about sound that I found really cool. I'll just very quickly do a screen share of my page here. Can you see this picture?
Yes.
So basically this is an experience with a haptic suit. This is a haptic suit where it gives you vibrations of music. So it allows deaf people to experience music, because music, like we said last time, is basically vibration. And so for deaf people who can't hear music, they can still they can still feel the vibrations of like a live orchestra. And the suit was the sort of simulation of that. That's why I'm like sort of closing my ears to sort of feel like is what I hear and what I feel sort of the same. And this is another really cool use of haptics that I wanted to bring to you guys to maybe close the session. If you guys want to stay and talk more, it's fine, but I know that like it's been an hour, so if you have like other engagements, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining today.